be thankful that you did something that alleviated the distress of these people. Now, in the meantime, we have a new group in the United States called the Society for the Anthropology of Consciousness. This is an affiliate of the American Anthropological Association, and this is just exactly the case that this group is interested in investigating. And there is a well-known American psychiatrist by the name of Ralph Allison who is investigating multiple personality disorders that have these possible etiological factors involved associated with possession. I say possible because we simply don't know. Nevertheless, one must be broad-minded about these things. And so I'm glad that you are being of some support and help to afflicted people of this nature. And I think that it's important that professional societies are open-minded about these cases, because there's a great deal about human nature that we still do not know, and if we close the doors prematurely, we might end up giving some incorrect therapy or incorrect advice to people. Now, I'm going to want to move into one other topic before we close at 1 o'clock, and so we're just going to have one more question. And then I'm going to want to do something else.
Voglio fare un breve commento sul controllo
sta parlando il professor Hirschfeld, come vi ho detto, che è direttore del centro di ipnosi medica e psicologica di Kfar Saba, che è un sobborgo di Tel Aviv.
Voglio fare un breve commento sul controllo del dolore. Sono pienamente d'accordo con il professor Krippner del problema del vantaggio del dolore, sia primario che secondario, e non sono d'accordo con la sua assistente che esce in questo momento, che quasi ci ha fatto capire che quasi è un'invenzione nostra dei medici e dei psicologi questo vantaggio secondario. Senz'altro nella pratica giornaliera è molto più facile curare dolore fisico, organico. Ognuno che si occupa tra di voi e tra di noi con dolori sa che è molto più facile aiutare nel cancro, nelle emergenze, come si dice, scottature, tutti questi dolori acuti, organici, fortissimi, è molto più facile. Ho molti casi che sono riuscito ad arrivare a una situazione dove già la morfina non mi ha aiutato niente, le mie parole hanno abolito completamente il dolore, è eccezionale. Comunque il vantaggio secondario è importantissimo. Posso farvi un esempio molto semplice, molto comune. Molto difficile curare la donna con la migrena, scusate le donne, la donna con la migrena che sorge ogni sera, emicrania. Mi sono laureato a Milano 15 anni fa, posso dimenticare alcune parole. Comunque quella che ha l'emicrania ogni giorno dalle 8 di sera fino a mezzanotte, fuori della domenica, è molto più difficile curarla, e si riesce a curare solo quando si capisce che il marito torna dal lavoro alle 7 o 7 e mezza e anche lui ha il diritto di lavare i piatti. Ovviamente il sesso sì o no sarà nelle sue mani o sotto il suo controllo, e la domenica che tutti e due sono a casa sono pari. Quando si arriva a questo, di capire questa cosa, può darsi che posso aiutarla con risolvere l'emicrania. Se no, no. E non è vero come ha detto secondo me, non è giusto quello che ha detto il suo assistente, che se lei viene a curarsi vuol dire che lei vuole curarsi e farà ogni cosa per abolire il dolore. Io concedo un po' di questo. Grazie.
Deve concludere il professor Krippner in modo che si sospenda alle 13.
Yes, I am going to have to postpone the other questions for this afternoon. because I have a very important exercise I want to take people through before 1 o'clock. I had promised to do a little bit on hypnosis and dreams, and I think the best way to do that would be to give you some of the inductions and guided imagery instructions that I use for people so that you can participate yourself if you would like to do so. Now, what that comes down to is if you would like, you can close your eyes and sort of go along with me as you hear these suggestions. If you would like to do this, you choose a dream that you have had. Preferably a short dream, because I'm going to go through these procedures very quickly. Or if you prefer to keep your eyes open and take notes, that's fine too. Even though all of these procedures will, of course, be on tape. Now, when I work with hypnosis to help people interpret dreams, I only do one of these techniques at a time. Today, for sake of brevity, I'm going to do them one right after the other. And then maybe at lunch you can talk to some of your friends about what happened to you as you went through these procedures. You all understand what we're going to do. All right, those of you who would want to participate, simply relax and close your eyes. Find a comfortable way for you to sit in your chair. Sometimes I even have people lie down on the floor when there's a large room. And begin to turn your attention inward by taking several slow and deep breaths. As you turn your attention inward, I'm going to have you count your breaths. And every breath you take will turn your attention inward even more deeply. Count at your own rate. And with every number that you say, you go deeper and deeper inward. So that eventually, outside noises will not distract you very much. Obviously, there will be some people moving about the room. There will be the sounds of the two voices. There will be noises from the street. But if your attention is sufficiently turned inward, this will not distract you. You will hear it, but you will not be bothered by it. Now, once your attention is turned inward, I would like you to go to the dream that you have chosen to work with today. And once you have gone back to that dream, focus on the object of that dream that was the most puzzling to you. Perhaps there was a person in the dream who puzzled you. Perhaps there was a bird or an animal that puzzled you. Perhaps something else you just could not figure out or make any sense of it whatsoever. Now, identify the part of that dream where that person or animal or other object first made its appearance. And once you have identified that part of the dream, use your imagination. Imagine that you are now that object or that person or that bird. Your consciousness is no longer within you in the dream. Your consciousness is now within that other person in the dream. And you're seeing the whole dream through his or her or its eyes. In other words, you are now a character in somebody else's dream. So, take yourself through the dream process. Keep the dream exactly as it was, as you remember it. But try to become the consciousness of that strange, puzzling person, animal, or object in the dream, And imagine how it would think and feel as the dream took place. And as you do this, you might get some insight into the meaning of the dream. There might be certain resemblances between how that strange person or object behaves and how you behave, or maybe how somebody that you know very well behaves. So this strange, puzzling symbol or object might stand for you, for somebody else, or for something going on in your life. Now I'm just going to repeat the directions once more, and then I'll be silent for a few minutes. You have now merged your consciousness with somebody or something else in the dream. And the dream is going to go forward to the end. And you are going to maintain the identity with that puzzling item in the dream, thinking and feeling as that entity would think and feel as the dream events took place. Go ahead. I'm going to remain silent for 2 minutes. If you are finished, just take a pencil and paper and write down 1 or 2 lines what you learned from that. What you learned about the dream, what you learned about yourself, anything that you might have learned from that little exercise. But just remain silent for the time being. Exercise. So please bring some closure to that exercise. And once again, close your eyes. Remain working with the same dream. But this time, imagine that you're sitting in a motion picture theater. Very similar to the theater we are sitting in today. And there's a screen in the motion picture theater, very similar to the screen that you saw yesterday. And on that screen is being projected a movie of your dream. Now, you are sitting in the theater watching the dream unfold. And the dream is unfolding scene by scene as best you remember it. And as you review the dream, you are going to get to a part of the dream that interests you a great deal. You think this one scene is the key to the meaning of the entire dream. Once you have seen that scene on the dream, you just press a little button on your desk and that stops the scene. And so that you can examine it very closely. You can go back and forth in this moving picture theater. You can run a motion picture backward, you can run it forward. But once you have found the scene that you really think is interesting, you just press the button and it will stop. And that is the scene that we are going to work on. The first thing we are going to do with that scene is to give it a title. If that scene were a painting, what title would you give it? By title, I mean The Great Catastrophe, or A Happy Day in the Country, or Going into the Dark Cave. What title would you give that scene from your own dream? And now, take another look at that picture. Does anything in that picture remind you of anything else? Does it remind you of something that you were doing, maybe the day of the dream or the day before the dream? Can you make connections with that scene and something happening in your waking life about the time that you had the dream? If not, does something in the dream remind you of something that happened earlier in your life? Last year, last month, 20 years ago, whatever. And now, look at that scene in the context of the entire dream. The entire dream. And ask yourself, what is the lesson being learned in this dream, for better or for worse? It might be a stupid lesson, it might be a very wise lesson. It might be a functional lesson, it might be a dysfunctional lesson. Maybe you are learning the lesson, maybe someone in the dream is learning it. But lesson, or lessons, are stated in dreams, and let's see if you can find the lesson in this dream. And again, open your eyes when you found it and briefly write it down. The lesson might be, it's impossible to teach old dogs new tricks. Or the lesson might be, run as fast as you can when a monster crosses your path. Or the lesson might be, if things are so confusing, don't try to make any sense of them. But see if you can find a lesson in that dream, and either think it through or just write it down. Now, bring this part of the exercise to some closure, and we're going to move on to another exercise. Remain sitting in the movie theater, though. And bring the dream right up to the end of the dream. Right up to the very last scene that you remember. Now something surprising is going to happen. The dream is going to go on for about 1 minute more. What would happen if that dream were to continue? Just let your imagination take off and imagine what the next scene in the dream would be if you had slept 1 or 2 minutes longer before awakening. Don't try to force it, let it emerge naturally. But just let's find out what the next scene in the dream would be, and after a minute I will stop you. You can stop. And now ask yourself, what did I learn from that continuation? Maybe I learned nothing new, which indicates the dream was complete as stated. Or maybe I did learn something a little bit new, especially in conjunction with the other learnings I've had from this dream. So if you did learn something new, just, again, write it down. Or if you don't have a pencil and paper to write it down, just think it through and remember. What did I learn about the dream? What did I learn about myself? What did I learn about the lesson given in the dream? Now we're going to do one more exercise with this dream. And for this exercise, you can go out of the movie theater and just imagine that we were back in this room. As you review the dream again, at what what point in the dream did you have the strongest emotional feeling? Or if you don't remember an emotional feeling in the dream, what point of the dream had the most emotional circumstances attached to it? So, look for the feeling in the dream. Now imagine that you are having that feeling right now in your own body. Whether the feeling was happiness, sorrow, fear, tranquility, confusion, or whatever the feeling might have been. And try to imagine that feeling very intensively in your own body right now. Now, focus on that feeling in your body, and we're going to take that feeling back into the past. When in your life did you have that feeling before? Maybe last week, maybe last year, maybe 10, 20, or 30 years ago. Maybe when you were a teenager, maybe when you were a child. But go back to your past and remember a time when you had that same feeling, or at least a similar feeling. And remember as much as you can remember about that experience. Now, if you have not remembered an occasion, just come up with an earlier experience where there was a feeling similar to the feeling you had in the dream. So that everybody has an experience to work with right now. An experience from your waking life, where there was an emotional feeling, the same as or similar to the feeling in your dream. Now remember as much as you can about that early scene in your life. Who was there? What was happening? What did you look like? And ask yourself, what did I learn from this experience? And how would I put that learning into one sentence? For example, maybe I learned that adults are not to be trusted. Maybe I learned my mother and father love me very much. Maybe I learned I am so stupid I can't do anything well. Maybe I learned I'm very capable and I can do many things well. But what learning do you associate with that experience? And again, if you want, you can write that statement down. The learning that came out of that early experience for you. Now take that learning and compare it to your dream. Does that learning help you to understand the dream in any way? Does that learning help you to understand what was going on in your life at the time that you had the dream? Does that lesson help you to understand or deal with what's going on in your life right now. Now, those of you who still have your eyes closed, I'm going to have you open your eyes.